1 Edward 1029, copy, threatening traffic.
Copy, moving route.
Edward 1029, if you can please respond to 2020 McNeil Street, Lake.
Copy. If you still have room on, give me detail information first.
Welcome to Shooting Straight with Brad and Casey. I'm Brad Carlyon, your Navajo County attorney, and my normal partner, Sheriff Casey Clark, couldn't make it this month, but he sent his Deputy Chief, Nathan Christensen, to join us today. And what we're going to talk about today is the Navajo County Veterans Court. And we have a couple guests with us, Scott Keil, who's the commander of the Show Low VFW, and Joe Clark, who is the prosecutor that works with the Veterans Court. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Scott, you and the VFWs here in Show Low were the ones that kind of really pushed for the Veterans Court. Can you talk about what happened?
Terry Hill was probably the lead one on that, and he pushed and finally got it through with the help of many others, and it's really making a difference.
Well, let's go back. What was Terry and the VFW, and Terry is a former commander of the Local 1, what do they want to see in a Veterans Court? What is the purpose from your guys' perspective?
Well, with veterans, what they go through with combat or being in the military, some things most likely need to be handled a little different. You know, the average citizen out there, you know, they don't know much about what happens in combat and how it affects people mentally and physically. And by having the Vets Court, and having mentors like myself as well as others to help these vets along, that, you know, it keeps them from being part of the revolving door in the incarceration process.
I know you have a local VFW's building here.
Yes.
And I know a number of you guys, like Chris, and I can never say Chris.
Chris Kosakevich?
Yes, thank you.
That is a tough name.
It is one. And Terry, I know that they don't drink, but they're often in the bar talking to some of these, especially young men that are having issues.
Yes.
Have you seen some of that? And was that part of the reason that you guys pushed so hard for the Veterans Court?
Yes. My service officer for the Post, Brian Tobin, he'll get a lot of vets in, and you know what, sometimes they just want to come in and talk with fellow vets because, you know, other vets understand what they're going through. And, you know, on occasion, we run afoul of the law. And that doesn't mean we're hardened criminals and we're going to be continually incarcerated. With the help of other veterans, you know, it helps them steer them in the better direction they need to be going in.
What was your service?
I went to Iraq, 2009-2010.
What branch?
Army National Guard, Arizona Army National Guard.
Joe, you come from a military background too, don't you?
I do, yes. I'm a Marine Corps veteran.
Ooh.
Have you seen with some of your contemporaries that were in about the same time as you issues that Scott's talked about?
Yeah, they all have the same kind of concerns. I have a good friend who was a corpsman with the Navy, obviously serving with the Marine Corps. And even as a corpsman, they're the Navy's version of a medic. He came back with some serious PTSD issues, and he's been dealing with those demons ever since he came back. It happens to everyone who goes over there. Not everyone, and it's actually relatively few who have issues that are significant enough to bring them into our court.
Right, because they have to get in the criminal justice system, right. And you see many at the VFW in our communities who are battling the same issues but haven't gone into criminal problems yet.
Right.
I know you're not medical and clinical, but people with the PTSD, just from your observations, what kind of problems are they manifesting that you see?
Well, what I see from the criminal justice side of things and in court, we see bad reactions to bad situations. So they'll take a situation that may be very negative to begin with, and it just escalates into something very negative. Maybe a gun can be involved or a knife can be involved, into something that most people have the capacity to de-escalate. Where they don't, it automatically escalates.
And I'm sure most people know what PTSD is, but go ahead and define it.
Sure, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's basically your brain changes as a result of being exposed to trauma. That trauma can be a number of different things. It can actually be what you see and hear in combat. It can be dealing with the sights and sounds of perhaps, in the case of my good friend, from being in a battlefield hospital. He may not actually be exposed to combat, but he experienced trauma by bodies, yelling, screaming, blood everywhere. It can come from a number of different ways.
Nate, even in law enforcement, don't you guys see PTSD issues at times?
Yes, we do. Some of the people that we deal with, we can kind of determine that they might be suffering from an episode based on their reactions and based on some of the things that they might say to us.
And if one of your deputies had that, how would the sheriff's department assist them in dealing with that?
If we found a deputy who maybe suffered from that, I actually had a deputy kind of exhibit some of that on a scene one time, and I had to calm him down, and I had to put him in contact with people from the VA to get him the help that he needed.
So this was somebody who was a deputy that was former military too?
Yes, he was former military.
And then does the VA on its own offer assistance to PTSD if people ask for it?
If they ask for it.
The way you said that, elaborate.
That's just military individuals. They don't necessarily, they know they have problems, but they don't want to reach out. They don't want to put what's going on with them out to everyone else.
Sorry, we're constantly told to sort yourself out.
Yes,
right?
yes.
You're told sort yourself out, and we can't do that with these kinds of issues.
Some things are just beyond our reach, and if you don't have good people around you to help recognize that and try to steer you in the right direction, hey, you need to go into the VA and get some help, or at least come to a local VFW, American Legion post, where you can sit down with others like yourself and persuade you that yes, it's the right thing to do. You're not being weak by going and getting help.
For those who haven't got help, that are manifesting problems, do they it sounds like they self-internalize it, but does it manifest itself in different ways that you guys have seen?
You can become a total hermit. You can get in with the wrong crowd, and that can just manifest itself. Myself, back in 2012, when my senior vice, who's my service officer, run into me, he's like, you know what, you got issues. You gotta get out more. You gotta interact with other people. I was becoming very sheltered, closing myself off to everyone, and it's good to have those type of people around. But for some, it's not always the case. They don't have someone that they can open up to and sort through their problems.
So I gather you listened to him.
Yes, I did.
So what did you do?
What did I do? I started getting more involved with the VA and recognizing the programs that there is out there to help you out, and getting the proper treatment for my injuries.
And at what point in time did you decide to start working in the leadership of the local VFW?
I was kind of steered in that direction. They said they needed a young face and someone who was willing to go out and talk with people about the VFW and how we can help each other out, and community outreach.
And did that help you also in dealing with?
It does. It helps. Now it's the exact opposite. If you were to just lock me away, that I would regress back into what I was before. It helps me a lot being out in the community, helping others, helping veterans and veterans' families, which is what the VFW, American Legion, DAV is all about.
Why don't you go ahead and give us a little more background on the VFW, since that's the one you're more familiar with. Who's eligible? I know it's veterans of foreign wars.
Foreign wars.
So do you have to be gone overseas?
Have to have gone overseas.
Okay. And what all does the VFW offer somebody who qualifies to be a member?
What do they get? They get the camaraderie of other veterans. There's so many different things that the VFW is involved with in the community right now. One of the big things is we're working with a few other service organizations to create a memorial scholarship fund in Officer Darren Reed's name. And it's things like that. You know, we give back to the community because the community is really giving a lot to these local service organizations.
You hear that veterans fight with the VA to get the services that they need and deserve.
Yes.
Does your VFW assist people with that?
Absolutely.
What do they do, and how can people utilize that
Well,
service?
starting a week from tomorrow at the VFW Post here in Sholo, from 10 to 2, Michael Flanagan from Congressman O'Halloran's office will be here every week to listen to any problems that are going on and how congressionally they can help out.
And where is the VFW in Sholo located?
381 North Central,
Okay.
right off the Deuce of Clubs.
And what other services do you offer to your members besides the camaraderie and helping different issues?
For Thanksgiving, we offer meals to our veterans as well as to the community. Anyone can walk in off the street for a Thanksgiving meal.
You do that at the Elks, don't you?
No, that's done at
okay.
done at the VFW. Food box programs for anyone who calls up the VFW that, hey, they need a food box for Christmas, and we wind up providing enough food for an individual for 1 week. And this past Christmas we did 109 food boxes, and that included presents for young kids, and they weren't necessarily veterans, but some of them are veterans. Other things we offer, service officer program helps the veterans with their claims through the VA to make sure that they're getting the treatment they need, they're getting the mental and physical services that are required to help that veteran, you know, have a productive life as much as productive as can be with their injuries.
So most of the stuff you do isn't really about getting things from the VFW, it's about giving, isn't that
Giving,
right?
yes. Yes, and throughout the year we have to have fundraisers, you know, to help pay for those things, those services provided.
You got your fish fries and
Fish
those other
fries,
things.
steak fries, other different. Legion has their breakfast once a month, first Sunday of every month.
Yeah, so you and Terry Hill kept pushing myself and the presiding judge at the time and the court administrator, and you guys never took no for an answer. And I need to give a shout out to Judge Dale Nielsen.
I was going to throw that out in a little bit, yes.
Yeah, because as soon as he took the bench, he grabbed on to this program. Joe, do you want to talk about first how somebody even gets into the Veterans Court?
Well, the first thing that needs to happen is a crime has to be committed, right? And that's the unfortunate part of getting into Veterans Court. Once there's a crime that's committed and investigated, and we have a crime or a case in front of us, a prosecutor is going to review that case. And often the defense attorney is going to find out that the guy or the girl involved in the crime is a veteran, and will probably talk to the prosecutor appointed to that case and ask about Veterans Court. And if it's appropriate, that prosecutor is going to have to make a determination as to whether or not it would be appropriate for that veteran to forego some perhaps higher consequences in order to participate in Veterans Court. And once you do that, they reach an agreement, the prosecutor and the defendant or the veteran, and he's put on probation. And as part of that probation, he has to participate in Veterans Court. And what that means is once a month he comes down and stands before Judge Nielsen and has to give an accounting for his month to the judge. And before that happens, we all sit around as a team with Judge Nielsen, myself, members of the VFW, the probation officer, a social worker from the VA. We all talk about each and every veteran once a month. So they're known to us. We talk about them, we're concerned about them, and we discuss them, and we try to establish whether or not something needs to happen that can help that person become better, a better individual, become better at doing what they're supposed to do for probation if that's necessary. And so then they come in, they give an accounting to Judge Nielsen, and if we've decided that as a team that something needs to happen, Judge Nielsen will tell the individual you have to do this or that, perhaps go to AA meetings, perhaps go to PTSD groups, whatever it is. Anyway, that just happens once a month, and usually if they do well for a year, they can qualify to graduate.
And how many graduates you guys have had so far?
We've had 2 graduates so far. We have another scheduled to graduate this March.
I assume that the participants sign some type of waiver so that the counselors can provide information as to what's going on?
That's correct. They do have to sign a waiver of their privacy rights so we can discuss them.
So there's a good flow of information then as to how they're doing or not doing and things of that nature, so you can make informed decisions on how to better help them.
Right, and without the participation of the VA, the Veterans Administration social worker, we wouldn't have a successful program. His name is Mark, and what he's able to do is, if we have a problem, he's able to get that person the services that they need quickly. And then they go to their counseling, and he reports on what happens in their counseling week after week. We know what their attitude is like. We know whether or not they're participating actively, not just sitting around doing nothing. We know a lot about what goes on in their counseling sessions with each one of our veterans.
Do you see a typical pattern that most of your participants go through?
Well, it seems like we have 2 basic types of veterans in our program. Those with good attitudes coming in and those with bad attitudes coming in. So there are those who come in and they want to participate. From the very get-go, they're looking for help and they don't have any problems whatsoever doing whatever is asked of them. And then we have people who come in and they hide the fact that they're drinking, they lie continually, and we're kind of forced to assist them more actively in their good decision making. In fact, the person who's graduating this month was such a person, and he was an alcoholic, is an alcoholic, and he would lie to his probation officer, lie to the court, lie to the judge right to his face about his drinking. Eventually got to the point where he was a danger to himself. In the middle of the winter, he fell into Rainbow Lake, and very much a danger to himself. He was living with his mother. His mother would tell us constantly that he's drinking. He'd come in and say, "I'm not drinking." And so we had to put him in jail until we could get him into a VA facility. And that's the other part of this that is so important, is because we have the VA involved, we can get people into this treatment program in Prescott called the domiciliary. And I'll tell you, for some reason, they come out of there very different from when they go in, especially these people who have these bad attitudes. This gentleman has been just on a good track ever since he got out of the domiciliary, and they often are.
And those things don't cost Navajo County or its taxpayers anything. That's all provided by the VA, right, as a requirement under the federal law to help these veterans.
Right, and they would qualify for that even if they didn't participate in Veterans Court. Right. But it's because we have this attitude as veterans of we're going to straighten ourselves out that they don't. And so unfortunately it takes something bad happening to get the services that they need. But it's amazing that once they start getting these services, they do get sorted out.
So it sounds like one of the first big steps, besides unfortunately a crime occurring, is identifying who's a veteran and who's not. And Nate, the sheriff's office and the jail in particular has been helping in that area, haven't they?
Correct. The jail has a questionnaire that they ask people as they're being booked, and if they determine that someone's a veteran, then they pass that information up to where it needs to go.
But unfortunately, it's only getting us those who are being booked in jail, not those who have been cited and released.
Exactly.
And you have mentors through the VA, VFW, and the American Legions throughout the county that help. How are these guys helping?
We make sure that they get to court. We make sure that they get to their medical appointments at the VA. At any time they call and they need someone to talk to, we're there for them.
Somebody who's walked in their shoes that can understand
Yes.
their issues, I assume.
It seems that when you take veterans who have been trained to respond to a structured lifestyle, and then they get out of the military, and that's where some of them go bad. They miss that structure, don't have that structure, and then the Veterans Court provides that structure, and they respond quite well to it, majority of the time.
How do members of the VFW or the different American Legions volunteer and become mentors to help out with participants in the Veterans Court?
Lately, we've just gotten the word out, and they've just, hey, I'm free that day. Can I come and help mentor? Just the show of other veterans there helps those veterans out.
So it's just not one mentor assigned to a participant. They could have a number of mentors that assist
In
them.
fact, the newest American Legion commander that just got sworn in, his first name's Nathan, he'll be showing up too, once a month to Vets Court.
From a veteran's perspective and the head of the local VFW, do you see good results?
Yes, absolutely.
Why and how?
Like I mentioned, the structured part. You give them a structure that they can follow, and that means the world to them. It puts them going on the right path. It's really nice that this month we're going to have our 3rd graduate, and to think a few years ago this couldn't have been possible.
Brad, we couldn't do this without the VFW. Oh. It would be a worthless program without them, especially for the long-term help of a veteran, right? I mean, they can say the right things and do what they need to do and get off the program if that's really what they want to do. But what the VFW does, and all the mentors, is they just surround the person, right? They can't get away. They can't get away from what is good and what's changing in their lives.
Tough love.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. I mean, they come together, they leave together. During our staffing before court, the VFW mentors talk about what the participant has been doing for the month. I mean, they know. I mean, you guys know what's going on with our veterans, and we couldn't do it without you.
So maybe it's not just the structure, but also the camaraderie.
Yes, the
that
camaraderie
you're talking about
is a big help. And we see it because some of them, they'll ride into court with us, so we talk to them ahead of time. We know what's going on, if they're trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes or they're really trying to clean their lives up.
I also need to give a shout out to Senator Jeff Flake from Arizona. He's seen the value of Veterans Court like the ones we have here in Navajo County in Arizona, and he understands that there isn't enough money for the VA to have those coordinators come to the VA court. So he's introducing a bill this month to provide 50 new coordinators across the country and fund it for 10 years so we can get at least a minimum 50 new veterans courts out there.
That's fantastic.
So if you guys believe in veterans courts, write Senator Flake a letter of endorsement so that he can share it with his colleagues, and hopefully we can get that passed.
Another thing we're trying to work on through Senator Flake's office and Congressman O'Halloran is things like mental health. Mental health for the veterans with PTSD, the continuity of care ends at the time of incarceration. We're trying to get it so the Veterans Administration can continue with telemed for mental health.
Yeah, we haven't
because those are the ones that are more apt to be able to deal with those.
Right, and they haven't been convicted of anything yet, so they shouldn't lose their rights except for freedom.
Yes.
At the time, and unless.
But even still, after that to have telemed for PTSD and other mental health issues, that would help out a lot.
No,
and it wouldn't come out of the.
I'll definitely help you push that with O'Halloran. Yeah, but we're seeing the same thing in our jail with our access patients, aren't we, Nate?
We are.
And then the other part is they get kicked off as soon as they walk in the doors, and then when they leave, they're no longer enrolled, and then we have this delay process for re-enrollment. And for those with behavioral health issues, they continue to spiral back downward, and Nate gets to see them in the jail again pretty quick.
Yeah.
And the psychotropic drugs are expensive. So if we can get the VA to pay for that instead of the county, that would be a win-win too.
And if it helps them live a productive life, it's a win-win. Have you talked to the 2 graduates?
Yes, we see them from. One of them works at one of our local stores here in town. Very productive member, and they love him.
And what have those 2 said about the program?
They're grateful for the program.
Have you
turn their lives around. Yes.
So I bet their family members are grateful too then.
Yes, they are.
Get their husband or wife, son or daughter back the way they knew them before they left.
In fact, our last graduate, his father was at the graduation ceremony. He said some very interesting words about how the court has affected his son and his hope for the future. And so, yeah, the parents, all the family members of these veterans are incredibly grateful for the effect that that we have on their children.
Well, thank you for making our Veterans Court run. Thank you for your service and being our guest. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us this month for Shooting Straight with Brad and Casey.